get into Periscope and YouTube. Back on YouTube today, by the way. Back and better.
What happened? What happened?
I'll be honest, I have no idea.
Report on that?
I have no idea.
No.
Gone the whole weekend. Hands off. What's up, guys? NBA Strategy Show presented by SuperDraft. It is Monday, January 27th. I am Josh Engelman. I am joined, as always, on Mondays by Dave Loughran. And not really a fun one today. Not a fun day to talk about basketball. At least not a fun day to talk about DFS. But we don't have a choice. That's what we're here for. That's what we do. Lofty, what's up?
Yeah, man. Right, the Kobe Bryant, it's terrible. It's horrible. And I think making it worse, and something that certainly shouldn't go unnoticed, is obviously there were 9 people in there, but the fact that his daughter was with him, that when I heard that, it just, like, he was only 41, right? He was only 41 years old. The idea that a 5-time NBA champion, 2-time finals MVP, 18-time All-Star, like, the list goes on of the accolades that he racked up over the years. But a 13-year-old daughter, and now your wife is without a husband and a kid, and your kids are without a sibling and a dad. That's the part that hits me the most. But I did basically a 2-hour radio show on it yesterday on Sirius 210 XM87. So if you want my thoughts, Manny Laura was with me. We scrapped the entirety of the show that we had planned as the Kobe news broke. So if you want any of my further thoughts on that, you can go there. Outside of that, Josh, I said the same thing yesterday. I'll say it again today. And it drives me nuts when people say, like, when bad stuff happens, I can't believe you guys are talking about this. Or, I can't believe you guys laughed. This is our job. Like, this is our job. It has to be done. And I can assure you that, in instances like that, I'm not someone that's ever going to make excuses for stuff like that. But, like, it's not fun to talk about that type of stuff, to talk about sports when that happens. But yeah, we have to.
Right. That's what we're paid to do. It's what you guys come here to listen to. It was just a bummer. I was out with my wife and a friend of hers. We're going to some, like, soup cook-off at a bar, and I saw the TMZ alert, and I was like, God, it looked like a fake TMZ alert. It looked like the front of a National Enquirer. Like, guys, I think Kobe Bryant died.
I know.
They're like, what? And I was like, they're like, that's not real. I was like, TMZ's not posting this. If, like, once I went to TMZ proper, I was like, TMZ is not posting this if, like, they have not sourced this. And if this happened anywhere other than Los Angeles, I'd be a little bit more dubious. But they are going to be plugged into Los Angeles news. Like, I can't see a scenario where this isn't real. And then the floodgates opened. So then we asked, it's a brewery. There's TVs.
It's a tough word to say, by the way.
Brewery? Yeah, it is.
Brewery, yeah.
TVs all around. Every single one of them is on the Pro Bowl. So I get the waitress.
And the Pro Bowl didn't mention it for a while,
which was also weird. Neither here nor there. So I asked the waitress.
I think they're just waiting for confirmation, because now everyone wants to report first before accurately, and it's a joke.
I asked the waitress, hey, do you think you could put on ESPN News on one of these TVs? I don't even see anybody watching the Pro Bowl. So I was like, okay, can we just get one? She comes back. She's like, no, sorry, we're not going to be able to switch it to ESPN News. Like, okay, sure, whatever. Meanwhile, 10 minutes later, some guy goes up to the bar and they switch one of the TVs to put on the stupid PGA tournament. I was like,
so they just weren't willing to change the channel for you,
apparently, to put on what is very clearly national news.
Wow.
I was like, okay,
I've never seen
seen
an outcry like that on Twitter before. And somebody says to me, like, oh, you must have been too young for the Michael Jackson death. And I was like, no, I was 22, 23, 23 years old. That's not my point. My point is simply that in the social media era, like, Princess Diana, there wasn't, and by the way, in no way am I comparing any of these, so pump your brakes. In that time, there was no social media. So there was the effect that had on people was massive, right?
Yeah.
massive.
Oh, if that happens now, it's crazy.
Exactly.
If Kate
And
Middleton dies in a car accident in a tunnel, like
exactly.
Twitter breaks.
Right. And the effect that Michael Jackson too was huge. And yes, social media was around, Twitter was around, but it wasn't nearly the way that it is now. I mean, Twitter actually broke for a couple
Yeah.
minutes. Twitter stopped working, stopped loading my news feed. The TMZ tweet had 100,000 retweets in the first 15 minutes. So yeah, in time that I can remember on Twitter, on social media, I haven't seen anything like it. And I can say that pretty confidently. I can't remember the last time, Roy Halladay was big, Jose Fernandez was big, but and again, not comparing this,
Right.
but just the fact that somebody like Kobe has had an effect on so many people. And quickly, the one thing that really illuminated everything for me was my sister knows nothing about sports, right? Like if I asked her what a free throw is in basketball, she'd probably have no idea. But she texted me and said, "Did Kobe Bryant really die?" And when you have people that have never even heard of, like 99.9% of professional athletes knowing before the news even starts to pour in that this is a huge deal, that's kind of when you know what we're dealing with.
Yeah, this is going to be big for a while, all the way through, services and things like that. This is going to be everything that everybody talks about. It's just a bummer. It's a bummer regardless. It was the biggest bummer when it got confirmed that his daughter was on the flight.
Oh, God, yeah.
For that brief moment where it was just like, are there more Bryant family members on? Like, not that the death of everybody else is not as important, but when it was just like, oh, are there more? Like, is more of his family on this plane?
Justine said this morning when she was leaving for work, I was still half asleep. Like, there was another guy with his daughter and a mom with their daughter.
Yeah.
It's tragic, man. It really is. And, Kobe, well, I mean, he never heard his Hall of Fame his speech. He never heard, any of that. And he's going to, be remembered as one of the greatest ever, whether he's alive or not. Let me ask you this. What's your greatest Kobe memory or moment ever?
I have two things that I immediately think of about Kobe, and neither one of them have anything to do with the NBA.
Actually, I can agree that my two favorite as well.
So one is that I saw him play in high school. I was 12.
You went to see Lower Merion?
I did. They played a state playoff game in Pottsville.
Cool.
So 10, 15 minutes from my parents' house, I went with a friend and his parents. His older brother was probably comparable age, maybe a year older or something like that. So we all went to see that. So I saw him when I was like a legit kid.
Wow.
And he was a man among boys then. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't remember it the same way that I did probably 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Know that I was in attendance. And then two, and this is the one that gets slept on the most. He got into music for a hot minute. He's got a track with Tyra Banks that I used to listen to a lot in high school. He performed that live at an All-Star game, I think in 2000. Yeah, so my two biggest pieces of Kobe are before he made the NBA and what was potentially a music career.
Wow.
But you didn't see those
awesome.
Two answers coming.
No, but I can appreciate it.
Yeah.
I mean, we counted down 24 of them on Sirius yesterday, so I've got way too many. But one that stood out to me was when the Eagles won the Super Bowl and Kobe was losing his mind, holding his kid, running around the house as his wife filmed him. Just, when someone like that is experiencing the same ecstasy that you are over a similar shared experience,
right?
It's a really cool feeling. You know what I mean? And yeah, that was awesome. Another thing is just the fact that even when Kobe was alive, what would you scream when you stood up in class, crumpled up a ball of paper, and shot it into the trash can? Right?
I mean,
and
that has never stopped in my entire life.
No, but there were people. No, me neither. But there are people that like probably just know Kobe by name and have never watched an actual game before that say the same thing, because that's just the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, the amount of times that I've tried to throw, so like, if you're a sports fan, you just do that.
Mm-hmm.
You just do that. It's gonna take on a different weight the next time that I'm heaving garbage from 15 feet. It's, I just, I mean, I'm sure same for you, especially for you, having to be on Sirius from 2:30 Eastern time yesterday until the time that I fell asleep. Like, that was it. I was just on my phone. Like, I could not get enough of, talking to, you guys on Slack, just constantly updating my Twitter feed. Because for the first 2 hours, it was every 2 minutes we were getting a different piece of information.
100%.
And I was captivated by it.
It's I don't know. There's really no further words for it.
No,
I
mean, I don't know him.
Tragic.
It's what can we say other than this is an incredibly sad moment for multiple families, and one of the greatest NBA players to ever do it is gone way too soon.
Way too soon. Yep. And there will ultimately there you run out of words for what to say, but he's the type of guy that even on that 60-point game in his last game that he played, he took 50 shots. And throughout that season and the one before that, Kobe was not the same player at all. But he's one of the few players in the league where every shot they take, they think is going to go in. So even if they're 0 for 20 through the first 3 quarters, they're going to jack up another 10 shots and probably hit the game winner.
I have one final Kobe thought, and I'm going to put it to all of the people that watch this video to try to help me find this clip, because it's, again, not on a basketball court. He did an interview. God, it had to be like, I would say the early 2000s. I'm not entirely sure. With Stephon Marbury. And Marbury had like an interview show or something. I want to say that it was on HBO, but it could have been on like Showtime or something. It was just a sit down, the two of them. And Marbury is talking to Kobe about their kids, or at least one of the kids at this point. And Marbury is talking to him about how if his kid is sick, he puts a potato in the bed with the child, because there's some sort of like thing where the potato is supposed to like pull the sickness out of the child and put it into the potato.
Never in my life have I heard that.
And Kobe is just trying to sit in this interview like, what in the world is this guy talking about right now? I found the clip once a couple of years ago. I have not been able to find it again since. So if anybody can find that clip anywhere, put it in the comment section of this video. I've been trying, like, it was a thing for me and a buddy of mine back home for a while. It's the most ridiculous, like, just seeing the look on Kobe's face when he's like, this guy means what he says. And I don't know how to continue this interview.
That's amazing. So, I got to look that. You say you couldn't find it anywhere?
No, but I mean, they have like scrubbed this Marbury internet show from the bowels of the internet. 2 people in chat are saying it's an onion, not a potato. I'm not disagreeing with the wives' tale may be in this scenario. I am telling you for sure that Stephon Marbury referenced a potato. It's been a joke for me since the moment we saw this.
That's crazy. I'm gonna find it somewhere deep in the bowels of the internet. We will find it.
Oh God. There's a gentleman here that may or may not have found it. I'm gonna grab the end of the link for it, and I'll check it out afterwards.
And if you did find it,
I will.
Appreciate you.
I will. Yeah. If this is legit, I can't check it right now while we're on the stream. But if that is it, I appreciate it. I'll tweet it out to everybody in a bit. Yeah, that's what a certain race of people do, per the Dutch Truth. My wife's grandma had putting an egg in a sock over the door. But it's like that's the type of stuff that people did back in the day.
Yeah, if you have like restless leg syndrome, which I've had from periodically, it really sucks. There's something about like putting a bar of soap in your bed.
Right. That's I got nothing.
Crazy stuff, man.
So
crazy stuff.
I don't think that you and I have anything else to say other than, rest in peace to Kobe Bryant.
Yeah. And prayers to that family. That's it's unthinkable. It's truly it's unthinkable.
It really is.
Unthinkably devastating.
Unfortunately, the show must go on for us. So I've got last night's Sunday shoot around on DraftKings pulled up. We could take a look and see. I do want to pull it up because our own Ship My Money had a bit of a sweat going, from what I understand. Oh, wow. The end of this link that someone just posted is Kobe Bryant's interview on Stephon Marbury's old talk show is television's greatest moment.
Awesome.
Fantastic.
Did Adam not ship that?
No.
Only because he had mentioned to me.
I mean, he might have won something else, but he finished 11th in this.
Going into the fourth quarter, he's like, as long as Dame doesn't outscore Lamb by 17 points. And I thought, oh, that's not good. Like, Damian Lillard can outscore anyone in the fourth quarter, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. I'm pretty sure
Dame had
Lamb
84 fantasy points yesterday.
Right, I know, but Lamb, he needed like some points from Lamb, and in the last 2 minutes, Lamb put up like 7 real points, a rebound, and a steal. But I think Domantas Sabonis with the triple-double probably didn't help because he got that late in the fourth quarter.
Domantas Sabonis in the winning lineup, 66 fantasy points.
Yeah, great game from him, man.
Yeah.
But Damian Lillard, just unbelievable what he's capable of doing, particularly late in games. He just can't miss.
Here's the lineup for last night. Lillard, Shamet, Kyle Anderson, Domantas Sabonis, Kem Birch, Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, and Zion Williamson.
Really?
Went for 39.25.
Wow. Good old Zion.
Yeah.
What was his price?
He was 6,200. He was 3% owned. He went 9 of 16 from the field. He played 27 minutes.
Wow.
Interesting. 9 for 16 from the field. 11 boards, steal and a block, 2 assists.
Impressive.
Very.
Very impressive. Yeah, that game got pretty wild at the end. You just started seeing guys like Dame and Sabonis put up monster numbers.
Surprised to see him play 27 minutes.
Is this the best stretch of basketball Dame has ever played? Or does it just seem like that because the beginning of the season and the last, couple months leading up until this stretch seemed like some of the least impressive basketball he's played?
Well,
it might be,
doesn't hurt that CJ's been out for a little bit. Yeah.
But he was in yesterday, though.
Correct. It might be. It might be. Adams lineup that he had the mild sweat on: Kemba Walker, Devin Booker, also Kyle Anderson, Kelly Oubre, the lethal Bruno Fernando Trae Young combo. Bruno Fernando going for 31.5 at minimum salary. A big play there. DeAndre Ayton and Jeremy Lamb.
Yeah, Jeremy Lamb, baby. Lamb had a good game. 28 real points.
Yeah.
Pretty solid.
38.5 at 4,400. So shout out to Charles Gibbon, Charles, if I'm reading it in order, but I assume it's reversed. I have no idea. Highest owned player yesterday, Trae Young. Dropped that 77 burger. Dame was 5% owned, dropped 84 fantasy points.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
Just wow. Yeah, Trae Young. was honoring Kobe, which, by the way, what Toronto and San Antonio did, agreeing that whoever won the opening tip would run out the shot clock, symbolic because it's a 24-second shot clock. And then Phoenix, you see what Phoenix did?
They took the 8-second backcourt,
which is amazing. That like two of the violations that you could actually do that,
right?
You know what I mean? Because of his number, or numbers. It's just kind of amazing that in a basketball game, 24 and 8 have such meaning.
What number do you picture when you picture Kobe? Because for me, it's not 24.
It's still 24 for me. Just it's the most recent number.
Right. I immediately go to 8.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like when people were talking about it, I was just like, that's not the anchor to me. It's 8 for me.
No, and that makes sense. For me, it's just more so the most recent. So that's how my brain works.
I hear you. So that puts a bow on yesterday's DFS contest. We're getting a lot of 8s in chat and YouTube chat right now.
8.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. Like he was both numbers.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, somebody in Cantor33 posted in Premium Slack the Grantland article about the interview with Kobe and Marbury.
I'll have to check that out.
Highly recommended. Alrighty. Got to give the old plug to our besties, SuperDraft, the presenting sponsor of this show. I'm going to talk a little bit about SuperDraft in my office hours coming up today at 1 p.m. We're also going to be doing a little bit of a fun experiment tonight. SuperDraft isn't locking until 7:30. So Chris Spags and I are going to go up until 7, and then we're going to stick around for a half hour up until SuperDraft's lock at 7:30 and give out some SuperDraft thoughts for the final half hour before their Live Before Lock show.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. We just dropped the link into chat. If you go to superdraft.io or click the link that we posted, use the promo code AWESOMO. You can get yourself $20 in super cash on your first $100 deposit. They're running the $12,500 jump shot, $1,750 going to first 1,200 entries. We're going to get that one filled for sure. There's no salaries here. You can roster whoever you want. Doesn't matter. You can get every single stud you want, but everybody gets a multiplier. So somebody might get 1.5 times whatever fantasy points they put up. It changes the dynamic of the game in its entirety. I highly recommend you guys check it out. I love the mechanism. I've slowly started to work on building it out in my model workbook.
I'm so pissed I can't.
Yep, that's North Carolina, baby. Represent. But that's what I'm going to, for my office hours today, we're going to look into trying to figure out what kind of scores you need to win a GPP. If there's like a particular structure that seems to be rising to the top for lineup construction, we're going to do a little bit of digging today, try to learn a little bit more about SuperDraft. Because I have no idea. We get so used to making lineups with salaries that this is a very different mechanism, and I want to learn more about it. And it's not just because they are the presenting sponsor of this show, although it certainly doesn't hurt, but I think that it might be a more interesting way to play DFS, and I'm anxious to see the growth of the company. But for real, go to superdraft.io, use that promo code, get yourself $20 in super cash. They have an app, so you can go to whatever app store you want. If you're on your iPhone, not going to change anything. You'll be able to play mobilely. Just highly recommended. SuperDraft. No limits, more winning. We've got ownership. And we got a 6-gamer. It's a relatively tame week. I think there's more games tomorrow than there are today, which you don't see all that often.
I got to tell you, I love this week.
I do too.
Of basketball games. You've got 6, 9, 6, 6, 7, and then Saturday you have 10, Sunday 4, but because of the Super Bowl. But over the next 5 days, that is such a solid slate of games or scheduling.
I don't disagree. News coming out right now from Shams. They will be putting Kobe in the Hall of Fame as a first ballot Hall of Famer for the 2020 class. So he's going in with Tim Duncan and Kevin Garnett.
Yeah, it's incredible. I just saw Shams tweet that too.
Which is exactly how that should be. You don't need to wait on Kobe.
Who do you think will be his proxy to give the speech? His wife?
Shaq?
Shaq. That would be something.
Because obviously, I mean, both of them maybe, like, she says something measured, and then Shaq comes out and
I think they'll do something, something special.
Shaq would feel Jordan, maybe. Wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, I think either of them makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Certainly plenty of options, that's for sure.
Still hard to comprehend.
It really is. You ready to dive into this 6-gamer?
Let's do it, man.
Here we go. Detroit Pistons, Cleveland Cavaliers. Pistons 6.5-point favorites at home against the Cavs. Should be business as usual for the Pistons. I have one guy that I'm definitely interested in. Two guys a little bit more on the edges. We've got Andre Drummond projected for 22% ownership on FanDuel, 36% on DK. Derrick Rose is projected for 30% ownership across both sites. Those are the two guys I'm certainly interested in. Rose at 7,800 just feels so expensive, but with good reason. And then Reggie Jackson, 4,300 on DraftKings, 8% ownership. I have no idea how many minutes this guy is going to play, but since his return, 1.61 FanDuel points per minute. Obviously, that's not going to continue. I have him as a 1 fantasy point per minute guy, but coming out of the gates, reckless abandon here. What do you want to do with the Pistons?
I mean, yeah, Reggie Jackson has certainly played well. And last time out, he got 23 minutes there. It's really tough to say, though, because you've got like Reggie Jackson before. You had Blake Griffin it was in the rotation too. Talking about last year, but having Derrick Rose in there definitely concerns me a little bit. I mean, you're right. He's played phenomenal basketball since returning. I just don't know how any of that is even remotely sustainable. Maybe it is. It's hard to say, but I'm not necessarily sure it is. He was out with that ailing back last game, but prior to that, on the 24th, he played 23 minutes, and I guess the question is how many minutes do we expect him to get, right? Because so when you're in the starting lineup, you at least have a little bit of wiggle room there, depending on which direction the score goes. But he did close that game out, which is kind of important, right? He closed that game out with Rose, Galloway, Morris, and Wood, right? Drummond was out,
right?
But still, he closed the game out. So I think really depending on what the price is, would be and what type of other value we have on this slate is all going to determine what I do with Reggie Jackson. Right now, though, I just have a very difficult time relying, hoping that he gets 22, 21, 23 minutes. And not only that, not only hoping that he gets the same 23 minutes and closes like last time, but hoping that he can continue to produce well over a fantasy point per minute, because you need that at 43 and 4,500.
Yeah, like I'm only projecting him for a hair north of a fantasy point per minute. I don't think that he's established himself as the best point guard on the planet.
No.
I gave him 22 minutes. He'll be a viable paydown option, but Houston's bringing the heat when it comes to value plays for the 9:00 game. So we'll obviously get to that. Drummond's the guy that I want the most here. He made my contenders for this morning. I've got him 11th overall on DK. He's highly ranked on FanDuel. The problem is center is loaded on FanDuel today. I just like him clear across the board. 17.2 on Fantasy Draft is a fantastic price tag. $49 on Yahoo. I have no problems with it there. Drummond is what I like the most from the Pistons. If Derrick Rose is 30% owned, I will probably be a little bit under the field. He's very much in play. I don't want it to seem like he's not, but that price is getting to a point where, you need like 48, 49, 50 fantasy points from Rose in a GPP. That's a tall order.
I'm having a tough time with Rose as well. Now, I'm with you on Andre Drummond. I don't know what there isn't to like here. On DraftKings, he's a 1.45 fantasy point per minute player on the year. 1.45. Incredible stuff. Excuse me. And that's the type of numbers you should expect to get from him. It's funny because last game he had a monster stat line at the half. Still finished with 20 and 21, but in overtime I would have expected a much bigger game. He's just been consistent lately, though. When he's not getting injured or ejected, which even foul trouble has been way less of an issue this season. Andre Drummond's been excellent. He played 41 minutes in overtime. So 36 minutes in regulation. So I'd say with Drummond, I'm on board. With Derrick Rose, that price to me is just how much meat is left on the bone with Derrick Rose at 78. I don't think there's much.
No,
let me go back just for a second and ask you about Reggie Jackson.
Sure.
So when it comes to Reggie Jackson, do you think that Dwayne Casey is going to want to continue feeding him more minutes and we could actually get 25 from him today, 26 from him today? Or do you think he's going to want to stick around that 22, 23 minute range? Because there's a lot to be said that, okay, Reggie Jackson's minutes are going to keep coming up. And right now we got him projected at only 7% ownership on DraftKings. And on FanDuel, we've got him at 0.1%. So I think it's a question worth asking, because if you're not going to project him for that much,
right?
But if he gets that much, he could end up being one of the best value plays on the slate now that I think about it.
My guess is they're going to treat him in like a break in case of emergency type scenario where the goal is 20 to 22 minutes, something in that neighborhood. And if we get to a point where, we're in overtime or something along those lines, we can dial it up a little bit. But I don't think they're in any interest to just put him right back out on the shelf.
No, I think you're probably right, but what does stand out to me is the fact that last game he played, he closed.
Yeah.
So when you're closing a game like that, it suggests that Dwayne Casey does want him as a regular and integral part of the rotation. So that's at least worth thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something to keep an eye on. We just don't have enough info right now, I think.
Agreed.
On the Cavs side, Kevin Love, 36% owned on FanDuel, should be not really surprising, although I think that's a bit high. 18% on DK feels a little bit more reasonable. Darius Garland picking up a little love, 21% owned on DraftKings. I could do without that. Colin Sexton not getting much love. Tristan Thompson not getting any love. No Chetty, no Larry Nance. Kevin Porter, probable. Coming back a lot earlier than he was expected to. Largely irrelevant from a DFS perspective. Really, the only guy that we're looking at is probably Kevin Love or Tristan Thompson, I guess, unless you feel some kind of way about Sexton or Garland. What do you want to do with the Cavs here against the Pistons?
Yeah, it's a really tough team here to analyze, and it's been the case for a while, especially since they started getting healthy. Sexton's played pretty decent basketball lately, and I think there's always the concern that he is completely and entirely scoring dependent, right?
Yeah.
When Colin Sexton has a bad game shooting, you're going to get a bad game from him everywhere else because you're hoping for 4 assists. You're hoping for 5 rebounds. And it's definitely possible here against Detroit. It's a Pistons team that defensively has really struggled themselves and I think should continue to struggle going forward. There's nothing to really suggest that they're going to get much better. I think, you look at them over the last month and they're one of the worst defensive teams in the league, but they're also playing at a pretty slow pace as well. So there's not a lot here that stands out to me. Kevin Love would be the guy. Price point is pretty important here when it comes to Love. We were getting him at this high 7K price on DraftKings, which is where he's been. And on FanDuel, Kevin Love has been really routinely underpriced, I think. They brought him up a little bit to 7,300 from where he was over the last week or two. But as long as he gets the 34 minutes here against Detroit, I'm fine with it. With Henson healthy, he's not going to get any of the backup center minutes, which is fine. Larry Nance, they've got pretty much everyone outside of Ante Djidzic back, but I have no problem with Love. I wouldn't say I have any guy that's a priority here. And the last one I'll throw out there is just Darius Garland. He's getting huge minutes, 35 plus minutes pretty much every night. He just isn't doing anything with those minutes, Josh. But if I'm projecting him for 35 minutes in the starting lineup against the subpar Detroit defense, he's at least worth a mention and probably someone that'll squeak into a few of my lineups.
Garland at 21% ownership right now is kind of crazy in comparison to Sexton at 3%.
Wait, Garland's getting 1%, you said?
21%?
Oh, God. Oh.
I don't assume we have that by the time we get to lock, but as of right now, I'm going to go ahead and pass pretty firmly on 21% owned Darius Garland.
Yeah, I did not for a minute think that Garland would be that high. There's no way he comes in that high.
You would think that would go away, right?
You would certainly think so, yeah.
That's a bit higher than I would like. I don't have much else here. Like this is not a great DFS game. Drummond and Love are probably the only two things that I would recommend wholeheartedly. And even still, Love is not all that high on the list. There are plenty of other power forwards that look just like him on FanDuel today.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Kevin Love's fine, but there's no way I'm gonna view him as a priority. I did want to ask you before we move on from this one where you're at on Tristan Thompson. Really, just because the price tag has plummeted. I mean, on DraftKings, he is $1,600 cheaper than he was 2 games ago.
Yeah.
Performance-wise, he's left a lot on the table. But going up against Drummond, you can only assume the minutes are going to be massive. He's averaging almost 36 minutes per game through 3 meetings with the Pistons this season. So I actually think Tristan Thompson here might be going. What's his? Where we have ownership
9
on Thompson?
I like Tristan Thompson a lot at 9.
I really could find myself going Tristan Thompson over Kevin Love in most spots, not as a 1-for-1, but just in terms of preference. Yeah. At that price point, I still think he's too cheap against a guy in Andre Drummond that they're going to need his services for sure.
I prefer Tristan Thompson at 5,700 to Kevin Love at 79.
For sure.
Well, time to try to talk about this one. Miami Heat, Orlando Magic. One of these sides will be easy to do. 108.25 implied total for the Heat. 103.75 for the Magic. Butler, none. Dragic, all questionable. I have them all in right now. Who the hell knows? There's no we should get the information prior to lock. We'll definitely have it before the 7:30 SuperDraft lock. That much I can tell you. These guys were not all that fun to roster Friday night when we started lopping them off. As of right now, we have Jimmy Butler projected in the 20s in ownership. He made my contenders, so I am quite the fan. And then on FanDuel, 21% owned Bam Adebayo. He is also my number 1 power forward. I'm a big fan of Bam in this spot. A little bit less so at 8,700 on DraftKings. After that, I have no interest whatsoever in anybody from Miami. We need to see people ruled out before I want anything other than Bam or Butler.
Yeah, dude, I felt so good about Butler on Friday because everyone, the projected ownership on LaVine was through the roof, and Butler's really didn't even come up that much with ownership. It was going to a lot of those cheaper guys. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is great. He gets off to a start where he's just out of the gate destroying, right?
I was not happy about that.
I'm assuming you had some as well.
Or were you not as much as the field? I had everybody else.
How much was Butler owned on? Do you remember what he came in at?
I certainly do not.
My
memory is not quite there.
Okay, well, I'm saying you said you didn't have nearly as much. Like, did he come in very popular?
I'm gonna say that like he was 30 and I had 15 or something in that neighborhood.
Okay, so yeah, earlier in the day there was no ownership going to him at all because of the injuries, and then and then as time progressed and you got the guys out, Nunn and Dragic, it was like, all right, so we'll get to Butler. He got off to a phenomenal start.
Yeah.
I think he had like 20 fantasy points in the first quarter. And then he goes to the locker room, comes back, goes to the locker room again. He never got it back after that.
Yeah.
It looked like he was pacing a 70 or 60 fantasy point game. Never transpired, but that's okay. I think this matchup is like one of, and I'm just talking about the two teams, feels like one of the least appealing matchups you can get, right? Like playing guys against Orlando, it sucks. It just the same against Miami.
Yeah.
These games just never feel like they produce, and there's reasons for that. It's not just like, oh yeah, these we get unlucky. No, both teams play quality defense. Orlando plays at a crawling pace. You have a 211 total on this game, the lowest on the slate by 4.5 points, Josh. Look, the Magic have a 103 implied total, 108 for the Heat. If you wanted to get to somebody like Jimmy Butler, I'm not going to fault you for it, but I would really want Dragic and Nunn to be out. I don't think if everyone plays, Bam Adebayo's healthy or probable, like you mentioned, we're putting Butler, Dragic, and Nunn in, although we would agree neither of us really know what's going to happen here.
Right. We need
if
the
all
info.
of them, right. If all of them do play, I don't see a single priority here. It's tough for me to prioritize anybody. If they don't play, then we can start having conversations about who really jumps in as guys that are towards the top of that value play hierarchy today.
I didn't realize Tyler Herro's price jumped to $5K on DraftKings. So
yeah, I'm good on that.
Right, and unless Nunn and Dragic are both out, that's going to be an impossibility. Yeah, I'm with you. If they're all in, it's Butler and Bam for me, and that's a FanDuel thing. I probably wouldn't have much Bam on DraftKings, but I can only really look to Butler in this scenario. On Orlando, this one's fascinating to me. Nikola Vucevic is 8,300 on FanDuel, 8,600 on DK. I love him, and we have him under 10% ownership. Aaron Gordon is in double digits. He's someone that I'm definitely going to take a look at. $5,200 Evan Fournier looks okay on FanDuel. He's $1,200 more expensive on DK. Not huge interest in Markelle Fultz, but Vooch, Gordon, Fournier. I want to have some exposure here, but in particular to Vooch. I think he's going wildly underrepresented at center on FanDuel. He is at 7% ownership. We've got Capella at 27, Drummond at 21, Towns at 19. I don't think that this spot for him is all that different than those guys. And at 8,300, I have no problem seeing him put up. Right now, because of the way value looks, you need 48 to hit value at 8,300 for Vooch. That is not like a crazy number. So I like Vooch a lot. It's not a great spot. Miami's actually 3% worse than average over their last 15 games defensively. So it is something to pay attention to a little bit. What do you think about Vooch or the rest of the Magic, in particular, maybe your boy Markelle Fultz?
Just wanted to point out just real quick before we moved on that Tyler Herro did play 40 minutes last game in regulation. So while I don't like this matchup, I don't want to get it twisted. Depending on who's out for Miami,
right.
It could
be out of the rotation there for like 2 or 3 games.
Right. It could become a very enticing spot. And listen, Jimmy Butler's also questionable here.
Right.
Does he play? I don't know. We'll see. We'll get shoot around results. But if Jimmy Butler and a couple of these guys are out, Dion Waiters played 18 minutes last game. You'd need a lot of them to be out.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is Jimmy Butler returned, and mind you, this was an 18-point game. They brought it down to like a 5-point game towards the end of it. Actually, I think they brought it down to a 3-point game. So this got competitive. Butler would have been on the floor. He did not play the final 6.5 minutes of this game. Dion Waiters closed it out. So just worth keeping in mind that you might see some opportunity there, but let's hope that we don't have to go anywhere near Dion Waiters.
Agreed.
But yeah, I don't know, man. Watch all 3 of those guys are out. I don't think they will be, but that changes everything
for sure. The whole slate is going to be dictated based on how Miami's news comes out.
Agreed. Vooch was your guy, right?
Vooch is my guy today.
I like Vooch. Let me see though. How many minutes do you have him at? Probably pretty important.
33.
Okay. Yeah. And he's played 35 minutes in 2 of his last 3 games, both of which were competitive enough. That's good to see.
Yeah.
I guess it really all just comes down to salary. $8,600 on DraftKings, $8,300 on FanDuel. More appealing to me because on DraftKings, there are a few other guys in a similar price range that I like, but I also don't want to overlook, and you kind of touched on this, Clint Capella, you're not exactly getting him at a discount either. You're not exactly getting Adebayo, who is getting a lot of minutes surely and having a good season. That's not a discount at 8,700 against an Orlando team that slows it down and does a pretty good job of preventing easy buckets.
Yeah.
So I think among those guys, Nikola Vucevic is actually your best play in that 8K range.
I completely agree. I have him ahead of Capella. I have him ahead of Bam. I just think it's a really good spot. He's like a 1.35 fantasy point per minute guy. I have him exactly at 1.33 on FanDuel, so I don't even feel like I'm over projecting him, and he is just flying off the page. I really hope this ownership stays low. This is one of my favorite plays of the day.
For sure. And I had people tweeting and saying, man, you're so emotional over Markelle Fultz. It's like, what is he, your ex-girlfriend? No. Here's what he is. He's a guy that lucked into a triple-double. Okay? Yeah, that might upset people, but he had a very good game against a good Lakers team. It was impressive. Kind of happy for the guy.
You're such a hater.
Why don't you hear me out? He hasn't done anything since. He had one decent game. It's not at all unreasonable to look at Fultz and say, hey, I don't really like him against Miami. I mean, Josh, he's scored 11 or fewer real points in 5 of his last 6 games. So, forgive me for not having a ton of faith in Markelle Fultz. I just don't think you need to get to somebody like Fultz at this price point. And now that the rest of this team is healthy, with Fournier having been back in the rotation, the good thing about Fultz is you should get 32 or so minutes. But against Miami in the lowest projected score of the game or of the slate, I have virtually zero interest in Markelle Fultz today.
Do you think if the Sixers offered Embiid for Fultz, the Sixers would have to attach an asset as well?
You're a piece of shit. Why? Tell me how much you like Markelle Fultz then, Josh.
Not all that much. He's not a part of my DraftKings player pool.
He's not even in the player pool.
This game sucks for the Magic outside of Vooch.
Do you think sub 6K Aaron Gordon is worth looking at?
He is. I have him 20th on DK. He's 5th for me on FanDuel at whatever position he plays. Power forward. You never know.
He's been pretty underwhelming this year. There's no doubt about that.
He's been pretty bad lately, too. 0.83 FanDuel points per minute over his last 30 days. But his minutes are trending up as well. 38 in the last game. Did that go to OT? No, it didn't. 38 in the last game, 35, no, 33,
last
35.
Game was 34. Last game he played 34. You talking about Gordon?
Yeah.
Yeah, last game was 34. 38 before that.
I have Friday the 24th at 38, Wednesday the 22nd at 34.6.
They played the 26th, right?
Did they play the 26th?
I thought so. Yeah, it shows that they did.
Did I miss a day in my data?
No, they played the Clippers on the 26th, and he played 34 minutes. Which would have been yesterday.
The 26th. Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So 26 was yesterday, the way that you were saying.
Yeah.
Basketball Reference is slow to the punch now. The box score data that I normally pull is no longer available when I need it each morning. So when you were saying the 26th, I was not picturing that being yesterday.
Gotcha.
I just don't have it in here yet. But, the 4 games before that. 33 plus.
Well, even 34 minutes yesterday is still a lot of minutes.
Right. I gave him 34 for this spot. I think he is more than viable on both sides.
Yeah, it's just, and by the way, this is strictly a price thing. This is not, hey, he's playing at an elevated level. Hey, he has a good matchup. It is simply Aaron Gordon is cheap. and he has a good matchup. That to me is really all it comes down to. Even with Isaac off the court this year, he's averaging 0.91 fantasy points per minute, 21% usage rate, and a rebounding rate of 11.9%. So you're hoping for a decent game here, but it's hard to hold your breath when it comes to Aaron Gordon.
Do you have any interest in anything else in this game?
Well, I know we have to move on, but Ken Birch on DraftKings is 3,100.
Yeah.
And he's played 23 and 27 minutes over his last two games. On a slate where I think we're going to have a decent amount of value, it's probably unnecessary. But just we have to at least look at the fact that Ken Birch has started each of the last two games. And he's minimum salary.
I don't know what they're going to do there. I just don't know what they're going to do there. I certainly in play on DraftKings at no ownership. The Miami news will be interesting. I'm not sure Ken Birch is the best guy against like their fours when everybody's in, but if everybody is out, I think it looks a little bit better. Does that make sense?
All right. Yeah, no, I hear you. Look, I'm not excited about him at all. I just think, if he does fall into 28 minutes. Sorry, I was reading that. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
If he falls into 28 minutes, you could do worse, but I don't like him. It's just he's literally $100 north of minimum salary. It's the only reason I brought it up.
I hear you, man. I hear you. We're off to Chicago. Bulls hosting the San Antonio Spurs, 2.5-point underdogs at home. We'll start on the Chicago side, obviously. Walking wounded with no Lauri Markkanen and no Wendell Carter. Zach LaVine picking up some love, 30% owned on FanDuel right now. I can't really disagree. He's my number one shooting guard today. On FanDuel, that is, 9,300. Thad Young on DraftKings, $4,900. 40% owned right now. 40. That is the fourth highest number on the slate. I have him 12th overall. Not sure that I'm going to want to get to 40 on Thad. I think that there's enough value elsewhere that I don't have to go too crazy. I do not have a ton of interest in anything else from Chicago. It really is just LaVine and Thad, and I can't imagine getting shares of anybody else. What do you want to do with the Bulls?
Dude, I was really hoping that DraftKings would just price him at like 6K because he's been so popular the past few days, and then I don't have to even consider him anymore, right? That's what I prefer, because getting to 40% Thad Young at almost 5K really doesn't feel great. But I think it's probably a necessity that you have a decent amount of Thad Young, as ugly as that sounds. The San Antonio Spurs are really not a spectacular defensive team whatsoever, but this game does have a pretty low total, second lowest on the slate at 215.5. I think the big thing is very simple. Thad Young, the minutes should be there. He lost some in that blowout against Sacramento, but ended up playing in this win over Cleveland on Saturday, 35 minutes. If you're projecting Thad Young for anywhere between 33, 35 minutes, you're likely going to get a lot of him. And there's not a whole lot I can say about his production this year. On a per minute basis, you're getting him on DraftKings around 0.9, which is not bad. 33 minutes. If that's your average, I'm okay with that. So I'm there on Thad Young, but let's just hope those minutes. Let's hope Boylan continues to feed him those minutes, because the more times shared in the lineup with Zach LaVine, that he's going to have to rely on peripherals, and that's not exactly his strongest suit either.
No, it's not. No, it is not. Yeah, I can't. It's not a Chris Dunn, Satoransky, Cornette, White, anything. I mean, how many people are going to try to get the Kobe White narrative? Kobe going crazy for Kobe. That'll be a thing that somebody says at some point in time, I'm sure.
You think so?
I wouldn't doubt it. But yeah, LaVine, and that's it. And particularly for me, just LaVine on FanDuel. Again, Thad is a good value. But if everybody is already there, I don't see him as like also no-brainer value.
You know, Zach LaVine coming off that huge game, just monster game against Cleveland, and dropped that. Was it 68? I mean, yeah, 68. His last big game, right? So he had Cleveland on Saturday. Was it Saturday? Saturday, right? Yeah.
Yes.
72 and a half DraftKings points because that was the second of a back-to-back. Friday was, and then he goes 3 games with very pedestrian totals, around 35 fantasy points. 4 games ago, against that same Cleveland team, he dropped 68 and a half. Now, I'm not just saying it. I'm not saying it's just Cleveland at all. Right. But I do worry about how scoring dependent he is in most normal spots. And at $9,800 on DraftKings, I'm sorry, man. I know he's coming off a big game. I know that Zach LaVine can provide a lot of upside. I just don't see how I'm getting to basically a 10K Zach LaVine today. That's going to be real tough for me. I'd much rather just go to, if we're talking about paying up for someone, give me Karl Anthony Towns at a $500 increase just any day of the week.
For sure. We're on the same page. I don't love the DraftKings price nearly as much as I love them on FanDuel.
Yeah.
And then we go to the Spurs. DeMar DeRozan, 8,300 on FanDuel, 8,200 on DraftKings. LaMarcus Aldridge, 8K on FanDuel, 7,200 on DraftKings. Aldridge, mid-30s in ownership. DeMar, mid-20s in ownership. And to me, those are the only 2 guys you should be getting from this game, unless you're just taking full-on GPP flyers on Derek White or Patty Mills or Bryn Forbes. But DeRozan and Aldridge are the guys that are going to get the bulk. And they should. But I don't know. I don't like. They're owned at or slightly higher than what I think they should be. They are absolutely parts of cores for everybody. They're in everybody's player pool. I have Aldridge ranked 17th on DraftKings. I have DeMar ranked 24th, and that's about where I want to be. I'm guessing I have like 15% of both guys. It is wildly uninteresting.
Yeah, it is. By the way, you're not high on Luke Cornett?
I am not high on Luke Cornett, no.
Okay, I wasn't sure. The pricing on Aldridge is at least interesting. You know, he shows up when he feels like it, doesn't when he doesn't. That's kind of what we've gotten from him in what? It's got to be, what is this, like his 12th season or something? Yeah. I think on DraftKings, that's a perfectly reasonable salary. When you're looking at ownership, though, Aldridge, it's funny. Aldridge always gets ownership when he comes in at a bit of a discount. It just seems to be the case always. And right now we've got him coming in at what, 36% projected ownership on DraftKings. That's a high number, man. 33% on FanDuel at 8K. So, you know, whenever Aldridge is uber chalk, I have trouble getting there with any real frequency, but I get it at 72 on DraftKings. I do understand it, but I wouldn't say he's a top option of mine.
Would you rather have LaMarcus Aldridge or Nemanja Bjelica?
Okay, so Bjelica is 6,500 and Aldridge is 72.
Yeah. Bjelica projected for 16% ownership right now.
And Bjelica's got Minnesota. It sounds like a no-brainer, right? You'd say no-brainer to Aldridge, but I'm not so sure it is. I think I'd still lean Aldridge there, but the discount on Bjelica is pretty nice.
Agreed. It's an interesting spot if you're looking for a pivot away from, pick up a slightly less chalky guy. If you're building a single entry and you have Aldridge and you need to get a little different, I think dropping down from Bjelica and giving yourself a couple extra $100 to push somebody up in a great matchup is worth a look. This is a 3-person game. Well, 4-person game. LaVine, Young, DeRozan, Aldridge. That's it.
LaVine, Young, and LaVine on FanDuel.
Yes.
DeRozan, Aldridge. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the only other guy I would ask you about is DeJounte Murray, who is $4,500 on DraftKings.
0.98 FanDuel points per minute over the last 30 days. He has just not been playing well. Derek White getting more and more run every game. I don't need it. I don't want to guess on the Spurs ever.
Yeah, and you don't only have to guess for Murray's minutes, but you have to guess whether he's going to show up or not. So you've got to
Yeah.
get 2 out of 2.
That's all I've got in this one.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Guys, be sure to please hit that like button. We have 700 people in here and 95 likes. That's not going to be good enough, guys. Find that thumbs up. Go ahead and click it. Do whatever you got to do. It helps us out a ton. So if we can get those up a little bit, we would greatly appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel. Hit that notification bell so you know when we go live. Get alerts for every one of our shows. I will have office hours behind the paywall today at 1 p.m. That link will be placed in our Slack office hours chat if anybody is looking for it. Alex Baker will have his game plan stream at 4 p.m. Eastern. That is also behind the paywall. NHL is back. Jake will have his NHL strategy show at 4. That is in front of the paywall. You and Adam will be live for the deeper dive at 5 p.m.
Yes, we will.
And then myself and Chris Spags will be live starting at 6 p.m., going all the way to 7:30 for the SuperDraft lock. So stay tuned for that. NBA projections are free today. So if you're looking to dip your toe in the water of what we have to offer, Alex's projections are a hell of a start. I'd recommend checking those out. I'm sure we can get someone to drop the link to the projections in once they are live. Alex's in Chicago, so they're not up at 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time or anything like that. He waits for some news. But when they are up, they will be free, and I assume we'll have some tweets about it in the near future. Free to go, buddy. You ready to keep going?
Let's make it happen.
Now we're going to get into it. Minnesota Timberwolves, Sacramento Kings. Now we're starting to get a little bit more volume about our player pools. Timberwolves 3-point favorites at home against Sacramento. 114.5 implied total for me is the second highest on the slate. Karl Anthony Towns, 20% owned on FanDuel, 30% owned on DK. One of my top 10 plays of the day. Hard to get away from him. This is a great spot, no matter who Sacramento is trotting out at center. Should be a really fast-paced game. Wiggins is in the mid-20s in ownership. I could kind of do without that. Robert Covington not getting a ton of love. I don't mind him in the mid-5s. Been playing really well over the past 30 days. Jarrett Culver in the teens in ownership. I guess I can see it. Towns is the clear star here, but I want to have pieces of Minnesota across the board. This is a really good defense or a DFS matchup.
It is a good DFS matchup, and I think from a from an overall, this game as a collective, you're going to see quite a bit of interest here because look, you have a few games that have basically the same total, 2 of which we haven't gotten to yet, but this one 224.5. It opened at 226.5, but it's still decent for this slate where you don't have any crazy high over unders. The Timberwolves coming in at -3. I mentioned to you a minute ago, I just think that Karl Anthony Towns, since returning from injury, first of all, he's been totally fine. You're getting some really solid numbers from him. Last game, he had 19 of the Timberwolves' 22 first quarter points. 19 of their 22 first quarter points. Pretty remarkable. And I just have more faith in him to give me a higher floor with also the same ceiling or a higher even ceiling than someone like Levine. Whereas less frequently are you going to get your 33, 35 point fantasy point Karl Anthony Towns games.
Right.
I don't worry about him at all in this matchup against Sacramento. I think he should have a pretty easy time picking them apart in the paint and pretty much everywhere. I'm definitely a fan of Karl Anthony Towns today. As far as Wiggins goes, the guy is an absolute enigma. You don't know what you're ever going to get from him. We saw this the other day where he just was completely pulled a Houdini. He just disappeared from the game for the first half. Ended up, I won't even say salvaging it, but ended up not being outright despicable. But still, that price to me is a little bit more difficult to get to. I'm assuming that Wiggins will get some ownership today. Where do we have him on DraftKings? 71.
24.
Okay. Yeah, I had a feeling he was going to get some. Karl Anthony Towns is 28%. Honestly, I totally understand that. I'm not opposed to it whatsoever. I guess the big one here is, what are we doing with Jarrett Culver?
I don't know. I think he's owned like where he should be, 10 to 15%. Seems about right to me. That's where I have his implied ownership. He's 23rd in my rankings on DraftKings. I don't have anything fun to say. Like, if he's 15% owned, I assume I'm going to have around 15% Jarrett Culver.
Would you rather have Jarrett Culver or DeJounte Murray? Or Reggie Jackson?
I would
Culver, Murray, or
I would
Jackson?
rather have Culver. It's really close between him and Murray. And I mean, Reggie Jackson's just a question mark. I just don't know how long the guy's going to be out on the floor. That I'm not worried about like Reggie Jackson and him like not shooting or something along those lines if he's out there. I just don't know how long he plays. So I would go Culver, Murray, Jackson. I'm not particularly confident in any part of that. I'd rather have neither of like all. I'd rather not have all three of those guys, I think.
Yeah, I'm with you. Just not particularly high on Jarrett Culver today. Like we talked about, it should be a pretty friendly matchup.
Yeah,
but and Sacramento is not really a pace up team though, at all. You know, where they think they're middle of the league in pace, middle of the league in defensive rating over the last month. So I don't know. It's fine. I think we could get into some interesting stuff though, going up against the Timberwolves team that's playing at, a top 5 pace, and defensively. Now that Karl Anthony Towns is back, I'd expect them to start suffering a little bit more than they did with Gorgie Jang at center.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something I do try to point out when I can. Their defense is just going to be markedly worse, and that is fun for the other team. In particular, De'Aaron Fox, 7,700 on FanDuel, 8,100 on DK, projected for 27% ownership on DraftKings, and projected for 49% ownership on FanDuel. He is the chalk. Made my contenders series earlier this morning. Nemanja Bjelica at 30% on FanDuel, 16 on DK. Bogdan Bogdanovic, 29% owned on FanDuel, 21% on DK. A lot of guys popping some ownership from the Kings. Pace up spot for Sacramento. Really fantastic DFS game for them. I love Fox. 49% on FanDuel is probably even higher than I would have liked. But he is very clearly my top play in this game from the Kings. What do you want to do with Sacramento?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the top plays, I think, on the slate.
Yeah.
And not just from the Kings. He's $7,700 on FanDuel. Seems pretty outrageous, doesn't it?
Yes.
I mean,
and you know what's really crazy? He's my third favorite point guard.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, how many of their favorite point guards are value point guards?
One.
Okay. So who's the other?
My man Luka.
Yeah, I figured as much.
Yeah.
So long as DraftKings wants to, or FanDuel wants to price him egregiously low, then you just kind of have to keep running him out there. But yeah. I like the Kings quite a bit here, and for every reason that both of us just pointed out. You can look at Minnesota defensively over the last month or so, last 40 days. You have to remember, Karl Anthony Towns has only been back for a few games.
Right.
They were one of the worst offensive, one of the best defensive teams, with that being the case, or with him being out. So, I feel like you're talking about a situation where they are going to take a significant step back, but they should also be far more efficient offensively. I like Fox a lot here. Nemanja Bjelica is another good one. The price on him is kind of like sticker shock, because you never imagine you'd be paying that much for him.
For sure.
But he's getting the minutes, and he's playing well. And the fact that Bagley remains out, God, he is just, it's incredible how often this guy is hurt. I have no idea what to think of that.
Hey, at least they don't have Luka, though, Yeah.
Oh my God, I know, right? That's crazy. But with Dedmon, I mentioned that I was concerned about Dwayne Dedmon against Chicago, because I felt like, not going up against the big Andre Drummond front court, that he could lose minutes, but I don't know because he got into foul trouble. So who knows what we would have gotten from him in terms of minutes. I think he had 5 fouls. But I guess the question to you is how much Dedmon or how much run do you think Dedmon gets here against Minnesota?
I mean, I don't think that they know the answer to that question right now, so it's pretty hard for us to have even the slightest idea. I gave Dedmon 25 minutes. If you told me he played 20, I'd believe it. If you told me he played 34, I'd believe it. I don't know what they're going to do. They seem to make up his minutes as they go along.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally willing to admit that I was probably wrong about his minutes last game, and I'll tell you why. By the way, my concern was that he would play less minutes than we were projecting for him, but also that chalk Dwayne Dedmon, even if he did get those minutes, was not something that I wanted to get to. So we were right there. He had 10 fantasy points in 19 minutes. But here, listen to this, Josh. So Dedmon plays 9:37 in the first quarter.
Yes.
Has 1 personal foul, returns in the second, has 2 personal fouls, and leaves with 3 minutes left. So I'm assuming that he probably would have played throughout the rest of the half. That would have put him at 7 or 6, 7, 8, around 8.5 minutes in the second and 9.5 minutes in the first, putting on pace for a ridiculous amount of run. And then in the third quarter, he picks up that 4th foul after 3 minutes, returns to start the fourth quarter, picks up that 5th foul, and never returns. So there's a path there where Dwayne Dedmon saw an easy 30 plus minutes.
Yeah. That's the tricky part because I don't know if that even matters moving forward. I have no concept of what they want to do on a day-to-day basis. Buddy Hield is suddenly not a starter, which is not something that I would have expected to say at any point in time during this season. How many minutes do you want to see from Dwayne Dedmon before you find him very interesting? He is $3,700 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I know. And on DraftKings, he's 47, but he's getting basically no ownership.
Right.
Against this Minnesota front court where, I know Towns is a good rebounder, but it starts to get interesting for me. If I'm putting Dwayne Dedmon around 27 minutes, even 26, I imagine I'd have a decent amount. But I think he could play a lot more than that. Just looking at this last game, Dwayne Dedmon in the first half, again, played 9.5 and 6, right? So you're looking at it was 540 and 9.5. You're talking about 15, 16 minutes there. And then it was completely bogged down by foul trouble in the second half. He was clearly on pace to go well over 30 minutes. So that's all I can say.
Yeah.
And that would have been for the second straight game.
It's something I want to keep an eye on. His ownership will dictate everything for me. I will set my minutes for him based on where we have our ownership so that if it stays 5% on FanDuel, 3% on DraftKings, I just simply get more than that. If he rises to 15%, then I'm not really going to care all that much if I get Dwayne Dedmon.
How many minutes would it take from him to start getting a decent amount on DraftKings? What if you put him at 28 minutes?
I was going to say 27 probably starts flying in. He hasn't been great. I have him as just under a point per minute guy in my model. 0.81 FanDuel points per minute over the last 30 days. So I don't know what's going on with him, but even at 0.8 at 27 minutes, I think he's worth a bit of a look in a pace up spot. But for right now, I have him at 25 minutes, and I'll be keeping a close eye on his ownership.
All right.
You want to head to Oklahoma City?
Let's do it.
Thunder and Mavs. Mavs 1.5 point favorites in Oklahoma City. Best I could tell, everybody should be available for this one. Nerlens Noel would be the only question mark, but if Steven Adams is playing, that probably doesn't matter all that much. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was on the outside looking in of my contenders. He was number 11 today. He is the guy that I probably like the most from Oklahoma City. And in the biggest shock, Adams is in the teens in ownership. Gallinari is 30% owned on FanDuel, and SGA is unowned. 4% on FanDuel, 3% on DK. I like him the most by far. Am I missing anything? Do you have any interest in Shea? Because I'm going to have a lot more than 4%.
Yeah, I mean, when you're playing as much as he is on every single game, of course. Plus, his price on DraftKings is down $500 from where it was just a couple days ago. So it's not like you're paying an elevated price on him. Actually, you're paying less. Now, 7,300 on SGA to me seems more than reasonable. Not to mention that he has been rebounding a lot better. The stocks are tough to judge because you don't know, from game to game what you're going to get there. But I mean, 2 blocks and a steal last game. Before that, 3-1, 3-3, 1-3. He's been providing a ton of upside in the stocks department. How much is that going to affect, or how much can we really predict for that going forward? Not a ton, but at $7,300, I'm with you. That ownership seems very, very low. Even $7,600 on FanDuel seems very low for a guy that should be locked into a competitive game. 1 point spread in this game. Mavs are 1 point favorites. It is the highest total on the slate at 225.5. It is definitely a bit odd that you're getting no ownership whatsoever.
Yeah, I love it. Like, if he really is at 3%, I greatly prefer him to $7,100 Wiggins at 24. That's just not even comparable to me. I greatly prefer him to $7,800 Derrick Rose at 28% ownership. It's just, to me, that's just a no-brainer. Dude's been rebounding like crazy. 1.12 fantasy points per minute over the last 30 days, so he's cooking.
I know.
And I'm always a little bit more likely to invest in a young guy that starts to play better than where I had them, just because you expect guys to slowly get better. It seems like he is doing that right now in front of our eyes.
Yeah, I think with SGA, you're just going to have to run him out there and hope that the ownership is low, not because it should be, but because it's wrong. Dennis Schroeder's interesting. I'd rather get him at a price that is further separated from SGA, though. If I was coming in at like $6,200, Schroeder to me would be really appealing. I think he's a little bit too close in salary. Now, $6K on FanDuel, shooting guard eligible. It's not really the craziest idea. You've got 30 plus minutes every single night from Dennis Schroeder. Again, a close game, projected high score. All of that makes sense. And he's scoring at an incredible clip lately. He's been one of the primary facilitators on this team. So I don't think 6K on him is crazy at all. And then as far as Chris Paul goes, if it's Chris Paul at $7,500 on DraftKings, SGA at 73, I'll take Gilgeous-Alexander there.
Yeah, same scenario for me. I would have liked to get to more Schroeder, but if they're going to be neck and neck and SGA is getting no ownership, I just don't need to be there.
I hear you.
Do you have any interest in teens ownership, Steven Adams? I don't.
No, not particularly. The minutes just aren't reliable enough right now. You get Nerlens Noel back, assuming he's going to be back with that left cheek fracture. I'm assuming he comes back with a mask, fitted with a nice mask. If that's the case, then I would say you can't really rely on Adams' minutes to be there where we need them to be. The 23 minutes last game could be a little bit misleading because that was actually a pretty significant blowout. Minnesota narrowed the gap a little bit towards the end, but there was really no chance of them catching up. But if you're projecting Adams at even like 27 minutes, it's just going to be really difficult for me to get there.
Anybody else from Oklahoma City?
No.
And we go to Dallas, where this is one and done for me. 10-9 on FanDuel, 11-9 on DraftKings. He was my number 2 guy in the contenders today. I love Luka. He's at 46% ownership on FanDuel, which I think is completely reasonable. That 19 on DraftKings, even at that 11.9 price tag, I don't think that is crazy at all. There's enough value out there to easily roster him. It's a tough spot. OKC, solid defensively, but I'm going to have Luka, and I'm not going to have anything else from Dallas as of right now.
I can't imagine I will either. Listen, Luka Doncic, from a usage rate perspective, third in basketball behind Giannis Antetokounmpo and James Harden. And he is very, very close. I mean, less than 0.5% behind those guys. How about assist rate? You've got Luka Doncic, second in the league in assist rate behind only LeBron James. Take it one step further. How about rebounding, right? Rebounding among guards. Where does Luka Doncic fall? Not even close, Josh. He leads the league in rebounding among guards by a wide margin, 13.7%. The next closest player among guards that actually get minutes is down around 11% or 12%. So you're getting monster numbers across the board for Luka Doncic. Sub 11K. I don't care even if he's had a couple subpar games mixed in along the way. You're still talking about someone that is third in usage, second in assists, and then leads all guards in rebounding on the season. How do you get away from something like that? Even with these rough games, dude, he's attempted 23, 26, 25 shots. It's crazy.
Love this dude. I'll roster him at basically any price at this point, especially on the day where it's easy. I don't need Porzingis or Curry or Maxey or DeLon Wright. With Willie Cauley-Stein here, it kind of makes things a little bit less interesting for some of the guys at center. I think Porzingis should be better at center, and if Willie Cauley-Stein is there, that's just less minutes he's going to play at the 5. So,
yeah, Luka 18% on DraftKings, with Westbrook and Harden out. Clear-cut top option here. Yep. I really like Towns, but just different spots. They're almost $2,000 separated.
Ready for the final game?
Let's do it, man.
Before we hit it, though, 760 people in here, 208 likes. It's a hell of a jump from the last time, but I think we could do a little bit better. Don't be afraid to hit that thumbs up before we get out of here. Utah Jazz, Houston Rockets. Oh, buckle up for this one. This is going to be a hell of a game to break down. Pace up spot for the Jazz. They are 10.5-point favorites at home against Houston. Houston going to be without Russell Westbrook, likely sitting for rest. Without James Harden, likely sitting. He is doubtful due to that thigh injury. Going to be a hell of a game for the Rockets. But we'll start on the Utah side. Rudy Gobert going largely overlooked. 2% ownership on FanDuel, 5 on DraftKings. Price is pretty high. I have no problem getting to him if he's going to be that low. I think that makes for a nice GPP pivot to just the guy that's on the opposite side of this game. Donovan Mitchell is getting a ton of love, roughly 30% ownership. Price tag is just crazy. Bojan Bogdanovic, roughly 30% ownership on FanDuel and DraftKings, just under 6K. Joe Ingles is in the teens. Who do you like the most from the Utah Jazz here? Because they are picking up quite a bit of ownership.
Yeah, Rudy Gobert, when you compare him, if you want to the other players similar to him in price, whether it be Capella, Vooch, Bam Adebayo, they're all, $300, $400, $500 cheaper, but it's not a crazy disparity. No. Rudy Gobert is my top option there. Ahead of, I don't know where you're at on all of them, but I have him ahead of Vooch. I'll pay the slight premium to get to Rudy Gobert. The one concern is minutes, but what's interesting is Quinn Snyder at home games seems to run his guys longer, even in blowouts. I think this might have been something Adam mentioned a while ago, and I started paying attention to it, and he's right. Even in big time blowouts, they're still getting 30 plus minutes.
Yep.
And we saw that, 34 minutes in a 22-point win against Sacramento. They beat Indy by 30. He played 31 minutes still. So, and both of those games were at home. I really love to see that. And he's too productive as a rebounder to not consider, and as a shot blocker to not look at it and say, hey, when this guy does have a decent scoring game, you are going to get phenomenal phenomenal fantasy totals from him. He has 20 plus real points. Get this, man. 20 plus real points in 6 of his last 7. That's pretty incredible for a guy that doesn't sport a high usage rate. But the biggest reason for that is Rudy Gobert attempts everything from around the basket.
Yep.
So you don't need him to get up a ton of shots. On the season, he's attempting 83% of his field goals from within 3 feet of the rim. 83%. I mean, shooting 75% on those shots. You think about it, Josh. If this guy starts getting up 12, 13 shots, 11 shots per game like we're seeing, he's connecting on 8 or 9 of them every game.
Yeah, it's not like he's out shooting threes and there's a lot of variance in his outcome. Every shot he takes is likely going to go in.
Yeah.
Every shot he takes is worth like 1.6 fantasy points.
Yeah. He's 75% shooting within 3 feet of the rim.
Right. Like he's not, I mean, that's.
If you're getting 11 of those per game, now what's that, like 8 of 11 you're talking?
Yeah.
On average?
I like him a ton at these single digit ownership numbers. I do like Vooch more, but I see it like if Andre Drummond is 9,600 and Gobert is 9K and they're 36-5 in ownership, build your lineup with Andre Drummond, swap it to Rudy Gobert, and give yourself $600 extra to make a marginal upgrade somewhere else. That's not an indictment on Andre Drummond. That's just what I would do if I were looking at an individual lineup. An easy place to make a pivot to make yourself more unique in a tournament.
I'm 100% with you.
I'm going to have a decent amount of Donovan Mitchell. I think shooting guard is kind of blurry on FanDuel. A lot of guys in the mid-20s. Fine with that. I'm not entirely sure I love Bojan as much as the field does. 30% on DraftKings feels, I guess, a little high. I've got him around 24% in implied ownership. I probably like him a little bit more. I mean, I definitely like him a little bit more on FanDuel, where small forward is just a wasteland. This is my small forward player pool. Gallo, Bojan, Ingles, Culver, Barnes, Gordon, House. It's like 2/3 of this game.
That's brutal, man.
Yeah, it's not fun.
When you take a look at ownership on FanDuel at small forward, your top 3 or 4 are House and Gordon and Gallo and Bogdanovich. I mean, wow.
After that, I'm not in for 20% Ingles. I don't really need that in my life. Gobert is the guy that I want the most, just relative to his ownership, and I think Mitchell is just simply always in play, especially in this spot. Sans, Harden, and Westbrook.
For sure, yeah, and I mean Mike Conley's been back, but you wouldn't know it, right?
No.
That's not affecting Donovan Mitchell even a little bit.
Nope.
Conley hasn't played 20 plus minutes since returning. I think Donovan Mitchell here, very viable play, but not a top option of mine. For me, Rudy Gobert is my clear top option from the Utah Jazz. And I feel pretty confident about that. I think when it comes to Mike Conley and you're looking at salaries, I have a tough time going, or I'm sorry, I meant Mitchell. I have a tough time going Mitchell over De'Aaron Fox.
That's a good point. Let me look at it quick.
Ownership could sway some of that, understandably.
Yeah,
but.
I would prefer Fox to Mitchell, although they're both really close, and I would have both of them. And I think their ownership sort of reflects where they should be.
Yep.
And then we move to Houston. Here's the ownership that we have on DraftKings right now. 55 to Austin Rivers. 55 to Chris Clemens, number 1 in the contenders today, by the way. 41 to Daniel House. 30 to PJ Tucker, 19 to Clint Capella, 0 to Eric Gordon, who is 6,900. By the way, he is 4,400 on FanDuel, projected for 46% ownership. Daniel House also in the 40s there. Not sure I'm interested in that one. They're going to play these guys a ton of minutes, I would expect. So the floor is yours. How do you feel about Houston? What is your focus from the Rockets?
Do I need? I don't even want the floor on this one. So it's insane. All right, so let's do this. First of all, it's really tough to have any idea of what this team's going to look like with Harden and Westbrook off the floor.
Yes.
Because outside of games where one of these guys sits, you're getting D'Antoni staggering them, so one of them's on the floor at all times, right? And
they did play a game like 3 weeks ago where both were out, although Capella was also out.
right. So here's the thing. Nobody has played more than 140 minutes with both of them off the floor this year.
Right.
That's Austin Rivers.
Yes.
Who has a 23% usage rate, 26% assist rate, and a 7% rebound rate with them off the floor, 1.02 fantasy points per minute.
Yeah.
It's not a lot of run, but Chris Clemens has played 114 minutes without them, averaging 1.34 fantasy points per minute, 33% usage, and a 28% assist rate. Those are big time numbers right there, man. Who knows if they hold up over the course of an entire game, but those are big time numbers. And then finally, I guess what I could do, you know what would make more sense?
Oh.
I got something for you here, Josh. Let's do this. Let's take Eric Gordon and bring it back to last year, and we'll take we'll take Chris Paul off the court as well.
I get it.
So we'll take Chris Paul off the court. We'll take Harden and we'll take Westbrook off the court and see what we get with Eric Gordon, because like you said, the guy is egregiously expensive. So he's
egregiously cheap, depending on which site you're playing on today.
Yes, I'm sorry. It's so true. All right, so Eric Gordon over this stretch, you've gotten how many minutes from him? We've got 228 minutes that he's played with, either Westbrook, Harden, or Harden, Paul off the floor. And you have 1.38 fantasy points per minute, a 35% usage rate, 19% assist rate is really no surprise there, but 35% usage, 1.38 fantasy points per minute. And there you have it, man. That's definitely eye-opening.
Yeah. I would want a lot more than the 0 we're projecting him on DraftKings, even at 6,900.
Totally 100% agree with that.
I have this is a 30+% usage rate guy going to play 30+ minutes. I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. You cannot just look at his stats and be like, he scores 0.75 fantasy points per minute. We're talking about a completely different scenario now.
I agree.
To me, Gordon is a no-brainer on FanDuel. I don't have anything to add there. He's 4,400. Just play him. Don't worry about it. The two things that I think we need to talk about are Chris Clemens, because we don't really have much to add on Clint Capella, right? He's just a good play. He's 8K on FanDuel, 8,500 on DraftKings. He's going to get ownership. We know what we're getting out of Capella. Nobody knows what they're going to get out of Chris Clemens. Minutes, play style, whatever. Big fan of him. Campbell Camels. I know a little bit about Chris Clemens thanks to friend of the program, Ben Rasa, who degenerately bets on ridiculous college basketball games and brought Chris Clemens to my attention last year. Actually sent him a picture. I drove through the Campbell campus. It's about an hour from my house. I had to send that old picture over to Jazz Raz for that one. I gave him 28 minutes. He played 34 or something like that when Russ and Harden were both out a couple weeks ago. I didn't want to go into the third. I knew I didn't have to go into the 30s. But if he plays 24 minutes, he's the flat minimum across the board. 2% ownership on FanDuel feels a little broken. I'm going to have infinitely more than that. He's a guy that looks for his. He's not going to be shy about trying to, enjoy himself in this opportunity. I'm all over Clemens.
He's the best value play on the slate.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and on DraftKings at 3K where he's getting 55% ownership, I'm not telling anybody they don't already know anything they don't already know.
And he'll get a little less on FanDuel because you've got a bunch of other guys that are wildly underpriced like Eric Gordon. So I do understand that. But on DraftKings, who do you want, Chris Clemens or Kem Birch in your utility spot, right?
It's not close.
Pretty obvious answer there. Clemens has I know he hasn't played a ton of minutes this season. You look at his totals, he's played 224 total minutes, but his usage rate is 24%, right? Like you said, he's going to gun. He is going to get up shots. and you pretty much just have to roll with it. 78% of his field goal attempts have been 3-pointers this year, Josh. 78% have been 3-pointers. Get this too. Almost 20% have been almost 20% of his shots have been within 3 feet of the basket. That is exactly the type of guy that you want to roster, where you've got about 96, 97% of your shots coming either from 3-point range or coming from within the basket around the rim. That's exactly what you want.
Yep, 100%. Love the dude. And that is probably why he's on Houston's roster. It just so happens that he has 2 guys that are never coming off the floor in front of him.
Yeah.
Austin Rivers for 3,600 on FanDuel and DraftKings. I don't think we have much to say there. He also, just like Gordon, becomes a different player when those guys are not on the floor. Same scenario that you were talking about before with Harden and Westbrook and Chris Paul off. You're getting Austin Rivers to 20 plus usage rate. He's a terrible fantasy player. Usually the 0.9 or 1 fantasy point per minute guy when those guys aren't on the floor. So I have nothing interesting to say about Austin Rivers other than he is a fantastic value as well. I think that we need to talk about Daniel House. He's 3,500 on FanDuel, 3,900 on DraftKings, and we have him around 40% ownership. 48 on FanDuel in particular at the flat minimum. That's the guy that I'm not all that interested in. And I don't know why he's getting as much ownership as he is. 18% usage rate in the time with those guys off the floor, so he doesn't get like a big offensive boost. Rebounding rate doesn't do anything crazy. He's shooting 42% from 3 in the 268 minutes over the past 2 years that he has played with those big 3 guys off. I don't think that Daniel House is going to be a 42% 3-point shooter when there's no other talent on the floor. Seems like spacing is going to be a little bit different. He's not going to get the same looks. I think that's a little high because we have him. He's been a 0.86 FanDuel point per minute guy with those guys not on the floor. And I think that his shooting has been mildly fluky. I have significantly less interest in Daniel House at 40+% ownership than the public seems to have. I will be way under that number.
I agree. I think, just a lot of that is the fact that small forward is a barren wasteland.
It is indeed. How many minutes do you think Daniel House plays?
By the way, Eric Gordon is small forward on FanDuel, which changes everything. Yeah. Minutes for Daniel House. So remember, before he got injured, he was playing 35, 36 minutes per game. He was getting an incredible amount of run. I have him in for 32 minutes today.
Same. And that's just 32 at what? Call it 0.8 if you want to be really generous. This is not a 40% owned guy for me today. He is not the guy that benefits from those guys being out.
Listen, we talk about this all the time. Just because players are sidelined, there still has to be, you still have to see some of that usage or, maybe rebounding opportunity, maybe facilitating opportunities. You still have to see that be distributed elsewhere. And where is it going to be distributed? Chris Clemens and Austin Rivers certainly going to soak up a lot of those shot opportunities. I think House, you will see some additional usage because you have to. I mean, it has to be spread out. The amount of usage concentrated between Westbrook and Harden is insane. More than any other duo in the league, and that includes LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So, do I think House is viable? Yeah, but in terms of who benefits the most, he is not benefiting nearly as much as guys like Chris Clemens and Austin Rivers. And I really should say the same about oh my God, I just completely drew a blank. Clint Capella. With Clint Capella, how much does Capella really benefit in a spot like this? He's averaging 0.9. What's up?
Nothing major.
No, I actually think it might hurt him. The rebounding, sure, with Westbrook off the floor. So the rebounds opportunity should pretty much all flow through Clint Capella. But I don't know, man. I think this is a tough spot to rely on anyone to feed him baskets in the pick and roll or around the rim on lobs. Westbrook and Harden are two of the best in the league at doing that. Now you're relying on Austin Rivers and Chris Clemens. That gets a little bit tough.
Like he's obviously not avoidable. Like he's still just Clint Capella at 8K and 8,500.
Yeah, me. I would put it this way. I don't think DraftKings should have preemptively jacked his price up $500 just because of this. I don't think this is a spot where I say I'm willing to pay a lot more for Capella because these guys are out. With Eric Gordon, you think about with Eric Gordon, more than willing to pay more for Eric Gordon than he would normally be. More than willing to pay more for most of these guards. I don't want to pay a premium on Daniel House. We're not, but I wouldn't do that. Paying a premium on Capella for me is what makes it difficult. If he was 7,500, fine, but I'm not paying a markup just because these two guys are out because it doesn't help him.
Yeah, like I mean, we have so much center talent today. Drummond, Gobert, Bam, Vooch, Capella. I mean, they're all right next to each other in salary.
Yep, I know.
I'd rather just get to some of the guys that aren't picking up the same sort of ownership.
I'm with you 100%.
We have anything else to touch on here? Like, I mean, people hate PJ Tucker. 4,100 on both sites. You have to roster him today. It's not going to be fun or appealing. His usage doesn't do anything when these guys come out. But again, 36 minutes. I'm going to have some. I don't want 30% on DraftKings like we're currently projecting. I think that's high. I probably think that the 22% we're projecting on FanDuel is a little high. But he's not like a complete, I can't have this guy.
Yep. I mean, I don't really have any disagreement there. I think I've exhausted everything I have to say on the Houston Rockets. It's a big situation. It sucks that they're facing Utah, but maybe we could close it on this. It does feel like there is a part of this Houston team that could really end up being a trap spot. And that might be the spot where you could actually differentiate and get different. Because like you talked about with House, personally with Clint Capella, I don't think it's a big advantage. But if Eric Gordon's getting no ownership at 6,900, knowing what we just said, 200 plus minutes with these guys off the floor, I'm using Chris Paul as a proxy for this season, which I think is fair.
Agreed.
You're talking about 1.38, almost 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. And I assume Gordon's going to play a ton of minutes. If Gordon played 40 minutes in regulation today, I wouldn't blink.
No.
I wouldn't.
And I gave him 34.
Yeah, I'm likely going to, I haven't done his minutes yet. I'm probably going to give him 35. 34 is fine. Yeah. But seriously, dude, he could easily play 39, 40 minutes and it wouldn't be shocking at all. So if Gordon's coming in with no ownership, I'm more than willing to get there. And you know me, I hate playing Eric Gordon.
Yeah,
I mean,
but Eric Gordon with those guys off is a different Eric Gordon.
100, dude. He's not just different. He's so terrible with them on the floor. He's useless from a basketball perspective. Right. With them off, just night and day. Capella's still getting 20% ownership on DraftKings, while Eric Gordon is getting nothing, 0.1. I'm sure it comes up a little bit, but I don't think Eric Gordon is going to be nearly as popular as many of these other guys. There's sticker shock there. I think you have to have some Eric Gordon. Let's just assume, Josh, that he's at 1.38 we said around?
When Paul, Russ, and Harden are off, Gordon is 1.35 on FanDuel.
Okay. On DraftKings, it was 1.38.
Okay.
So let's just say he plays. We'll give him 35. I'll give him 34. 34 at just this average. That's 47 DraftKings points. Now let's also consider that it is a tough Utah team. I get that, but Gordon's going to have every opportunity in the world today, and he's probably going to get 35 plus minutes of those opportunities.
Yeah. No doubt. Like, I am being incredibly pessimistic with Eric Gordon's projection. Right now on FanDuel, I have him projected for 0.9 fantasy points per minute. That is highly pessimistic in comparison to what we think that he has done. He is
0.9?
Hear me out. 0.9, 34 minutes, 0.9. I wanted to see where he'd show up at that rate.
Gotcha.
His implied ownership for me as a small forward on FanDuel right now is 91%. I don't have to go and be more aggressive than I am right now. I will just automatically get him no matter what. That's 0.9. As pessimistic of a projection as you could possibly give him today is still undeniable on FanDuel. On DraftKings, that puts him in the pack of guys. The guys that are around him, Bielitsa, Wiggins, Aldridge, all, double digits in ownership. I think that he is already, with those rates, better than all four of those guys, and he is going unowned. I am not going to lack in Eric Gordon today, and I assume I'll get more and more as the day goes on.
On FanDuel, he should be in every single lineup.
He will probably be in every one of my lineups.
And he's small forward.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if I didn't have him in every lineup. I have him. Oh God, it's utter insanity. He's just a no-brainer at 4,400. He really is.
I'm with you.
Let's sum it all up. Favorite plays of the day on DraftKings.
So it'd be very easy for me to just say Houston, but I'll just reiterate that with Capella, I'm not that high on Capella. House would be like my second to last in terms of I'd go House at the bottom and then Capella right above that, but nothing crazy on either of them. Eric Gordon, even at 6,900, Josh, I really like him. Austin Rivers, Chris Clemens is in my opinion the best value play on the entire slate. And then I'll give you at the top. I really like Karl Anthony Towns. I have no problem with Doncic, but I do think that Towns is significantly too cheap. Thaddeus Young, you've got to do it. Guys that right now are getting some ownership, at least some of them that I probably won't be getting much of because of that. Darius Garland. I don't understand the whole Jarrett Culver thing, but I guess we have to keep talking about him.
Yeah.
That's pretty much the guys I really like here, and the guys that I think should be less owned than they are. And then I'll throw De'Aaron Fox in there as well. Pretty high on him today on both sides.
There we go. I've obviously dropped my top 10 plays of the day. Go check out my contenders video, which comes out before the strategy show is posted. It's fun. But for FanDuel specifically, Chris Clemens, Luka Doncic, De'Aaron Fox, very clearly my three favorite guys at point guard. Austin Rivers as well, but I prefer Clemens to Rivers, especially if he gets less ownership. Shooting guard is really murky. A lot of guys that look similar. Play the ownership game a little bit. SGA is without question my favorite if we're seeing him in single digits in ownership, and Levine, Butler, DeRozan, and Mitchell are all 20% or higher. I like all of those guys, but I'm going to play the ownership game and get to SGA. At small forward, Eric Gordon's going to be in all 150 of my lineups. I will rotate everybody else around that, and everybody else stinks. It's my least favorite position on the slate. Might be my least favorite position of the year for any slate. At power forward, give me some Bam. Going to have plenty of money to spend up for him. Give me some Bielitsa at 6,100. I don't mind getting to Aldridge or Love. I'm going to have a lot of money left over. And then at center, Drummond, Towns, Gobert, Vooch, Capella. I love all five guys. Gobert and Vooch in particular are the ones that are getting no love from an ownership perspective. I'd rather just get away from chalky Capella and get myself to Gobert and Vooch at single digits in ownership.
Love it.
And there we are. 6 games up, 6 games down. Got tons of content coming up for the rest of the day. Office hours, Alex's show, Deeper Dive, Live Before Lock. So tune into that. Lofty, do you have anything else?
Yeah, on Twitter, White Nose tweeted us, said, "So y'all gonna ignore Cephalosha revenge game?"
Yep.
What'd you say?
Yeah, I am.
I'm assuming he's being sarcastic or facetious, but
I don't know. It's Twitter.
yeah, look, when it comes to a guy like that, why is he getting significant extra minutes?
Yeah, he's not probably. I mean, maybe he is. I don't know, but I'm going to assume that he's not.
I have him at like 15 minutes. I don't really have much of an
14.
increase. Yeah, I don't have much of an increase at all.
I hate that we even brought this up.
Yeah, my fault.
Yeah.
I'm a man of the people, Josh.
I've never cared about anything less than Thabo Cephalosha revenge narratives in Utah, of all places. I got nothing.
I'll do it. I'm done. Just
No.
end it before I start talking again.
All right. For Laffy, I am signing off. Best of luck tonight. Hit the like button as you walk out the door, and we will see you again tomorrow morning for the strategy show.